Hey everyone, this is John Feneck with the Feneck Commodities Report, and with me today I've got two executives from Sidney Resources, symbol SDRC, Sean, the CEO, and his executive counterpart, Dan. How you doing, guys?
Pleasure to be here once again with you, John.
Doing great.
Likewise.
Great.
Good. So, I've been tracking the stock since we last interviewed earlier this year, and it's done quite well. The chart looks quite constructive actually because it really rocketed higher and has pulled back, but now is starting to make support right where it should. And had a beautiful day today. We're recording this on December 4th, so congratulations on that, guys. I know you put a lot of hard work into the story.
Thank you. It's been great to be recognized for the journey that the company's undergone for the last 4 years or so. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that support, and that reach out really helped us reach more of a new audience and share our story with a larger base. So we appreciate your support and Don Duritz as well. So
Yeah, no. Don was actually the one that brought it to me. So he definitely likes your story, thinks it's undervalued. So why don't we kick it off, Sean, with you just giving us a few comments here, and then I'll ask some questions.
sure, absolutely. So, yeah, I agree with Don. I believe we're significantly undervalued from both where we are and where we can go. So, when I got to the project in 2021, it was first exposed to me, and I think it was late February, and I began investing personally, and then some of my network joined then, and then eventually that year I joined the board. It was a tech play at that point with maybe gold, right? That was kind of the overview. There was reports from the 80s by the U.S. Geological Society and Goldstone. They've done pretty extensive testing that said there was $1 billion of gold in 1980s dollars there in just that one hill, the little giant vein. And there was a technology they were working on that they believed could revolutionize both on-world and off-world mining. Gary Meldrum's project there, and we funded both the expansion of the facilities as well as the expansion of that laser technology to the point where it was a utility patent that was approved. And during that process, we learned a lot about the region, and Dan's extensive history there helped with that. And as we worked to get our first doré and bars from the material we were concentrating in our test mill, we ran into some confounding variables, which led us to the discovery that this is likely a porphyry system with either a terrestrial iridium presence that was developed from about 300 million years ago of terrestrial activity during formation, or it was an extraterrestrial event in a porphyry system, which is incredibly rare. So we have a very unique polymetallic ore, which is amazing. We have tons of platinum group elements, rare earths, and we have that gold and silver. So we had an inferred reserve report written and done by Steve Dobson, who's later come on board with Western Frontier and is our subcontractor in geology. And that report showed us at the time about 8.7 billion in gold and silver and in one vein alone. And then that with the confounding variables of all these platinum group metals, we chose to stop publishing as much information at the time and start really discovering what was around us. And we claimed initially about 250 acres around the little giant. And then subsequently, we claimed about 4,000 acres around. The little giant vein. And that encompasses a historical mining district of Warren that is 22 veins within that with known producing veins, which is very important for the governments want to claim these critical minerals from mining spoils. So we're currently applying for that grant, and we are pursuing the entire region as we have a new neighbor as well. So over the last 3 months, we've been claiming and staking about an additional 7,600 acres. So that'll put our footprint to about 12,000 acres regionally, and within Warren, the area itself, about 11,400. So huge update, huge expansion to our footprint, and we encompass a great deal of the area. And Thomas Kaplan, a significant name in the mining space and commodity space, has come in and claimed 4,000 acres to the north of us as well. So very exciting to have a new neighbor with great experience and have his, silver refinery nearby as well for the future. So we had done work with Liberty Refiners before it was acquired by Sunshine. So we do have some relationships there, and we look forward to that continued conversation with their team in the future. Beyond that, we've had incredible progress on the rare earth concentration front, a regional group that does very complicated refining and work throughout the United States. We met with in May and June to discuss what do we need to do with our concentrate to achieve what they'd like. And we worked on that for those months until November, and we were able to achieve 30% concentration in that rare earth concentrate through gravity and up to 60% with chemicals. So it's really exciting where we are right now, right in the precipice of turning on those offtake agreements, whether it be with them or other regional players that do that. It'll be very exciting. And our concentrate values are being tested by Hazen Labs and other national labs to make sure that they are, consistent and compliant with that potential other partners' needs. And then there's other great opportunities in Idaho as well. There's a huge set of minerals here, and we have a lot of people talking to us about what we can do either together through various different, securities actions, which we'll get to, hopefully in Q1, Q2 as that continues to develop.
Great. Okay. So, huge land package. Great to have someone like Kaplan's stature nearby. Um, and, speaking about the rare earths component of your project, when we interviewed, rare earths were just starting to get interesting in the US. And that wasn't really something you were touching on too much back then, but now obviously this is like something to be shouting about to
Yeah.
investors. What do you make of this U.S. China, high five that we just saw a few weeks ago? I mean, I don't really think this is sustainable. What are your guys' thoughts?
I had the privilege to be on a panel this week discussing China's influence basically against the dollar and where that goes. There's demographic issues that they'll have to face for the next 20 years, right? They're on the edge of population decline. Reuters and Time Magazine and a few others cite that as about 2017 was the decline of their population peak. So that's where that starts. And will they have the infrastructure to support an aging population? I was just on a call earlier today regarding Japan in that capacity, their gray tsunami, if you will. And China is going to have to engage that as well. So do they have the ability to move their entire population much faster than a traditional republic does, like we are? Yes, they can move faster. That doesn't mean they move well for the interest of the people that creates momentum and engagement. With regard to rare earths, that's where a lot of rare earth processing happens today. But the major players in the world in mining have done a very poor job in exploration for the most part for the last 20 or 30 years. They haven't really been doing exploration. They've been letting juniors do that, and then they gobble them up and it's something interesting that they want. And they haven't been doing as much as that over the last 20 years. Last couple of quarters have been a little busier, which is nice to see. But I don't think China's relationship with the United States is going to mend anytime soon. Regard to resource engagement, they're always going to want to have control over resources. And as a superpower, we're going to want control over resources. So the more we can develop domestically and put towards domestic production is going to be redundant with both defense needs and industrial needs. And that's going to be very important to establish domestically, regardless of what China does, because we do need to have that autonomy and independence. And if you listen to Peter Zahan et al., it's very important to realize that North America, and especially America itself, as one of the few, is the only nation that can survive on its own as a continent. We can do everything for our nation, food, production, etc., without anyone else. Now, as chipset viability comes into that play, it's a little more complicated with Taiwan and some of the pieces there on superconductors, but the government is moving forward to assist with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great answer. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure why I have to remind everyone, but I'll do it anyway, that, the end of Trump's first term, ended with a, agreement, so to speak. And then, this year has been riddled with, US China back and forth on tariffs. So this to me seemed more like an optic kind of move rather than anything sustainable. So, Dan, perhaps you could chime in and just tell us a little bit about Idaho. and what it's like to work there. I know you've been in the state for a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah, you bet. I've been in Idaho, or dealing with Idaho for over 30 years. So, some of the really exciting things, particularly under Governor Little, just, I mean, in 2025 alone, they moved in January of 25. Governor Little, he signed the executive order. They called it the SPEED Act. It is to, streamline and coordinate state permitting, particularly on large scale projects, mining, energy, and particularly anything associated with critical minerals. That's a big step. And those things are important because not just in dealing with Idaho, I've got a lot of experience in dealing with the federal side of the world, everything from the U.S. Forest Service, the BLM, Corps of Engineers, those groups, and they've shown to move much slower. So it's nice to see the push at the state level to put together legislation to help move those things forward. He also created the Speed Council, which it's a kind of a permit review group that really coordinates and helps streamline, faster movement through the permitting process and recognizing projects for their economic potential. He's done a lot of work to promote faster permitting, particularly associated with critical minerals. And for us, that's huge, particularly with the recognition of the high quantities of the rare earths as well as the tungsten, everything even outside of the gold and silver and the platinum group. I mean, there's a lot here from a national security perspective. It's and just as a business climate, Idaho is very inviting. You look at the number of corporations that are located in the Boise area. They continue to expand infrastructure, but they really are moving in a path to support the development of natural resources and be supportive. We've even had early meetings with them to where they put together a meeting with a group of all the players in the permitting process. And you don't see that with a lot of states. I mean, they coordinate, you sit down, get to know who people are. We've had great movement and success with, like Idaho Department of Water Quality. And we're starting to see, I'm a bit excited. I'm starting to see some of that transition to even with the U.S. Forest Service with some of the, change in leadership. And in fact, today they're having, it is the Idaho Minerals and Energy Conference in Boise today.
Okay.
It's their first. And so those are the kinds of things they're growing. And I've got one of our contractors that does our environmental permitting is there and is there asking questions. Guests include the Forest Service chief, the new chief of the Forest Service is there. So yeah, they're doing a lot to coordinate and speed the process. But they're doing it in a way that you're not just speeding the process, that you're still being mindful and you're still protecting the environment piece of those things, but they're taking a lot of the unnecessary, steps that are bureaucracy related. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah, excellent. So, we've been saying all year since March when Trump basically got, set that executive order out to his team and said, "Hey, get all this stuff on my desk within X business days here about what type of projects we have in the U.S. that we can advance quicker." And then he doubled down in April with his fast tracking of certain projects. Do you think that's one of the reasons that you're seeing Idaho have this day today, where it's like the first you said?
I do. I think I think it's meant a lot. I think the state of Idaho has a good working relationship with the Trump administration. I think Governor Little has done a lot to facilitate that, as well as members within his staff, their Department of Commerce, and the different things that they do. I think it's a huge impact, and I think it makes, as being a veteran and having served and having a law enforcement background, those pieces, I really see the significance of a project like ours to national security. When you're talking about the relationship between China and the U.S., just imagine if conflict arises, if Taiwan were to, something were to go in that range, then who controls what resources? And I think we're in a position now where we're really having forward thinking of what resources do we have to be sustainable. You certainly don't want to rely on your enemies during a conflict for resources.
Right. Exactly. And this one's for either one of you guys. Obviously, just here a few weeks ago, we saw U.S. Exim support critical minerals in a big way, and saying that we need to, allocate $100 billion to this subsector of the commodity space. What do you guys make of that, and how significant is it to Sydney?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge focus. Dan just applied for a grant in the critical minerals space, and then Chantel just applied for a grant in the remediation and critical minerals from mine waste space. So when you look at the mine waste in the area, we're looking at over 300,000 tons of mine waste, and we just independently verified that those mine wastes do contain rare earths and other precious metals. So huge piece that we're sitting on, huge asset, and we are applying towards that. I just had a conversation with a company that is based in eastern Idaho who just received a $25 million loan from Exim, Import-Export Bank of the United States. And we're in conversations to see how we can be synergistic, as they're a little earlier in their process than we are, but they've got a great entree that has a lot of value. So in those endeavors, it's great to see who's applying and getting approved versus just applications, because, it really doesn't matter until it's a dollar in your hand, right? Or in your bank account in this case. So those conversations are going very well. Carlisle Begay, former Arizona State Senator, has been really impactful in, these introductions in DC with the Department of Energy and other, avenues. As we look towards those, it's which, area do we speak with? Yeah, speaking with a European banking conglomerate, they said we should be speaking with Secretary X about something. And then, working with somebody whose boots on the grounds in America was like, well, that's interesting, but they're not going to move until the DOE says that your critical minerals are important. So we're having those consistent conversations with individuals in the know to move forward as quickly as possible. And mining is a long game. It's not one of those things that, it's interesting to watch some people online. It's not Farmville or whatever other game where, a little guy walks over with a pickaxe and all of a sudden he hits pounds of rock and a lump of gold comes out. That's not how it works in real life, right? I mean, I was on the panel the other day, and globally, individuals are excited about a gram per ton on a large project, right? We're sitting at multi ounces per ton consistently. And right now it's just about metallurgy and finding that key to separate those acids, because they do like to come together in under heat and stress of chemicals. So we need to find the key to separate those properly at scale. And, if every rock was uniform, it'd be easier. But unfortunately, rocks are not uniform. And the way this event occurred, again, whether it was a meteor strike with the porphyry system or development, there's a lot of evidence that, it's interesting either way. And the valley is incredibly important to the strategic defense for the future.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That. Thanks for that answer. Is the company you're referencing that got the $25 million loan American Tungsten?
As a matter of fact, I believe they are one of the individuals that received a $25 million grant. So.
Yeah. Because I own that stock, and I actually put out a note like when that happened, saying it was very significant, but they kind of concurrently had some selling pressure from their financing. So I don't think the average investor got to see what that means. But what it means is basically, by my calculations, their balance sheet now is like pristine. They're probably around 60 million bucks in cash US if that loan goes through, which allows them to take a past producing mine in your state and go for it, right? Like that's really exciting news.
I think they're incredibly undervalued as a stock. I think they're in a great position for growth as a company. I can't speak to more than that, but at the end of the day, I think they're an incredible company with an incredible asset that has huge trajectory forward. So, if we get the chance to work with them, great. Very early in any conversations about anything globally, whether it's with them or many other individuals. So I can't confirm or deny that we're working with them, but we're working with individuals like them in the area.
Yeah, how far are they, just out of curiosity, in kilometers or miles?
I'd have to Google that. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
It's not that far.
It's not very far. I mean, there's really nothing that's very far in Idaho, just the way it's set up. But to just add to that conversation, one of the pieces that, when we release the data on the testing that we've done on the rare earths, I think a lot of people may have missed the fact that at the high levels of tungsten that we have as well, those are important pieces, and those are all the different things that the U.S. is looking to.
Yeah, those grades are above 3%, by the way, which is insane. Like we don't know if it's
Yeah.
going to be consistent because we haven't been really looking for it, but in, the various tests we've run, we have seen it, and that's really impressive as well. So we have cobalt and tungsten and all this stuff regionally, which is huge. But right now, I want to remind people that, well, these rare earths are incredibly valuable and could have regionally $100 billion of assets in what we control today. The gold and silver is still there too. So we still have that asset, and inflation adjusted, that asset's around $11.5 billion with the gold and silver. And then the platinum group in that one vein again adds, they're 27 billion or so if those assays are consistent. Now, if they're lower than that, obviously that number would be lower. That's why it's a MRE as a reserve estimate that's inferred versus proven, right? But
Right.
regionally, those veins are consistent, and we know where those 22 veins are. A lot of projects have an inferred reserve that have a few drill holes. We have, nearly a century of mining data of active mining, mapping those veins, drifting on them. And then Dr. Marissa Acosta believes that those veins go from not just 800 to 800 feet, they go to about 3,000 feet on her estimation. So we'll be working to verify that in the future as well. But if you aggregate this data, these various data points, which is thousands of data points, by the way, not a few drill holes, but thousands of feet of drifting, 10,000 tons or so processed into concentrate and tested. That's far more than most assays sets that you see that turn into a 43101. We have a very robust sample set of data, and you regionalize that to the lowest numbers. They say we take the lowest sets of assays of all assets. What we control before the 7,600 acres is about $72 billion in inferred asset reserves, which is huge. On the high side of that scale, if it's that multi-ounce versus the nearly an ounce on the low side, the multi-ounce averages run you to 11 trillion regionally, which is incredible, right? That's at depth of 800 feet only. So you extrapolate that with width and depth to 3,000 feet, and now those numbers become astronomical. That's why we believe a billionaire moved in next door. That's why we're seeing this action globally. And we will continue to grow forward. We've got a lot of interest. We have some debt offerings that we've been looking at. I'm not sure if that's the right way to go. We've got some equity offerings from various, from Singapore banks, from European banks. But production is the key, and we know that. So we're driving towards production, driving towards these offtakes for rare earths, and working on the metallurgy with Hazen. So I think those are all important aspects of the future. It is a multi-tiered path forward. It is not a simple, we've shifted, we're doing all these things at once.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. You're throwing us a huge number, Sean. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about like what was the last date of your reports that would separate the inferred from the M&I?
Sure. So the inferred asset is a report that was done by Steve Dobson before he's with the company. So that uses a series of trenching that was done along the entire vein length.
Yeah, and that was actually Richard Morris.
Yeah, Richard Morris did that, and then Steve Dobson aggregated the data and used the assays from literally, I think 7 different labs, and I go back through them, dozens of assays, if not more, definitely hundreds of samples. So you put those into the calculations, and you get that ounce estimate at 800 feet. And that's how the extrapolation is done. Now you add to that what we're seeing in the precious metals as far as platinum group assets, and then the rare earths, and then you can, multiply those values out and receive that. One of the things I did recently for a share or a board meeting was take an updated inferred report just for inflation purposes from when it was written. Obviously, we've seen a huge commodity increase in value because of probably QE globally, right? We've We have about 20x to catch up, or maybe 15x to catch up on global prices to the amount of money that's been printed for money supply that's out there. So commodities are still a safe haven over time, whether or not there'll of course be ups and downs there. But you take that data, you take all the published assays, and plus I have more of them that you guys don't, and you put those into an aggregator and disseminate that information, and you can have an inferred reserve from that into what we have today. And that's how that's calculated. So I literally just did the calculation with both ChatGPT and Grok, and is reviewed by various geologists for those numbers, because they already established the number of tons. You just put in the various assays to get that range. And what I've always been excited about is that, okay, maybe all these assays are wrong. Maybe everything we have is wrong, right? That there's a possibility that, Oris Noble, all these various labs, whoever they might be, you can look them up on our technical reports page and see who's been writing them. And maybe they're 1/20th of that, right? Maybe they're 5%. Maybe these were just really great samples. Granted, we did shovel samples and grab bags and we didn't favorite them, but doubt us, right? Because we're interested in the outcome and you don't know who we are, random person. So be a doubter. Take 1/20th of that position. Okay. So let's say we're worth 1/20th of $12 billion because none of the platinum metals come out. Well, that's still pretty incredible, right? From an asset base. The rare earths are consistent. We're seeing them. Reports from the 30s, reports from the 2000s, all have this rare earth presence in them. Well documented, well established geologists saying that this is present. In the 30s, their comment was, "We know this is really valuable. We don't know how to use it yet. We know that technology in the future likely will." And lo and behold, over time, that's become a reality. And they saw constant or prevalence of up to, is it monzonite or monzonite? I always get that wrong, Dan.
Monazite.
Monazite, thank you. Up to 50% in its prevalence regionally. So that is the ore piece we're looking for that has those rare earths in it. And that's up to 50% of volume in some cases. So that's gargantuan. So you take all that and extrapolate that there is something phenomenal here. Whether we're worth $1 billion or whether we're worth $100 billion will happen in the future, right? And that'll take time. This is a huge asset. No one's saying that tomorrow we turn a key and we have $12 billion of cash, right? It's going to take time to develop and it's going to take a lot of work, but we've also positioned ourselves to do that work. We have private land throughout our holdings to make sure that these assets will be achieved and can be achieved through private land. Whether it's oil or whether it's mining, it's easier to work from private property than public property. So we'll continue to do that.
Great. Well, hey guys, I think we'll leave it there unless you wanted to add anything else.
I don't have anything. I think that was pretty thorough as far as an overview of where we are, and just excited for the future. And thank you very much for your time, John.
Yeah, of course.
I would agree. Thanks, John.
Yeah, no problem, Dan. It was great to see you guys again, and would love an update. Hopefully, like maybe in Q1, to let us know where things are moving. In the meantime, I'll just close by giving everyone um, the ticker again. SDRC is Sidney Resources. Trades quite well. I mean, I've been following your story a lot since we interviewed you this year, and the spread has definitely narrowed a bit, and pretty liquid for a junior, which a lot of people like. Um, Guys, my website is fenneckconsulting.com. If any of you listeners wanted to check out our services, and I'll be running 2 U.S. conferences in the mining space in May of next year. I hope some of you will check that out. It's going to be May 17 through 19 in Washington, D.C., right near the White House, and then May 20th through the 22nd at Four Seasons, Fort Lauderdale on the ocean. I think it's, I've said this many, many times when I've been interviewed, but 2019 Beaver Creek for me was game changing in terms of starting this business that I have. It really came from that conference, and I met, 35 CEOs like Sean here, and it was just like life changing for me to sit down with people and really get like the true story behind where their project is and where the project is headed, because you can't always discern that from a presentation deck on a website. So hopefully you guys will think about attending, and we'll leave it there. Thanks
I look
again,
forward
everyone.
to seeing you there. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, John.
Yeah, of course, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.